Welcome to today's session, and this is a special one for me simply because of the topic I wanted to cover. The thing that I've been looking at in the last 12 months is this idea around being more conscious of neurodiverse salespeople in the workforce. So for me, that's through building the right onboarding and learning programs that is a lot more inclusive. And it's also how do we set those environments up so that those who do have a neurodiversity have that ability to still be successful in sales and still feel supported. So this is a topic close to my heart. I want to welcome our guest today, Theo Pitsikas, who was diagnosed with attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, at the age of 30. So he's been gracious to come onto the show and actually explain some of the things that he's had to face in his journey once understanding that diagnosis. So Theo, thanks for being on the show.
All good. Yeah. My first podcast. Glad to be on here. It is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And some of the discussions we've had, what I got was a sense of just your understanding of it. And I think since your diagnosis, you've done a lot of that gathering of the knowledge and the structures and some of those ways of handling it in sales. Look, the first question I always ask my guests on here, your sales story. Tell me about how you got into sales. What are some of the highlights? What are some of the challenges through that story?
Yes. First off, I was a personal trainer. I'm an avid gym goer, and I was training people, but I was watching TV. Had a focusing on them. Should have been a warning sign. I was never a top performer at school, so I never went to uni. Always thought I was below intelligence because I couldn't focus and because I was untreated ADHD. Then I moved into hospitality, which was okay, late nights and whatnot. It's not glamorous, but it worked out. However, the ADHD came through. I'd forget to lock things, forget to check things. I left the safe open, left the cell door open, unlocked, those sorts of things. All warning signs, but there wasn't as much education around neurodivergence as there is now. Then I decided to move into sales, and I moved into a call center role. Very monotonous. I was a top performer at that role. However, a lot of the time I went into an autopilot role, and I worked in finance before getting into SaaS. I've been in sales for about 10 years. A lot of the challenges are around the admin and a lot of the little 1%ers in sales. Like, no salespeople good at admin, having ADHD. A lot of those little mistakes that you do, they are recurring, like the dear first name. Everyone made that mistake, but I seem to do it in every new role, even though I've made it. I've been in environments where I've been supported, and I've been in environments that are supportive. And someone with ADHD, when you're in an environment and have a manager that's not supportive, it's detrimental to your mental health. It wasn't detrimental to my performance. I hated turning up to work when I was hitting 200, 300%. More recently, I've moved into SaaS, been an SDR for a few years. I have been in supportive environments, more recently in SaaS, and a company called On24, one really supportive environment. I have Andrew Vidler as my manager. I was top 5 globally. More recently, a company called Cognizant, top 4 globally. And that's because I'm in the right environment.
I suppose then for those out there that were like me 12 months ago that didn't really understand what neurodiversity was, what ADHD was, and there was a quote. So there's someone in an association, Shaheen, who her business is around building those learning environments specifically to be inclusive, and neurodiversity is one of them. And she had a quote in a session that I attended of hers that said, when you've met one neurodivergent person, you've met one neurodivergent person, meaning there's so many different variations on each one of the conditions that are identified as neurodivergent. So just from your understanding and knowledge, help us understand what is ADHD and neurodiversity in a general context.
Okay. I'm know a little bit about the other disorders, but basically neurodivergent, if you were to do a scan of my brain, it would look different to yours. If you were to do a scan of someone with dyslexia, their brains would light up in different places, as well as Asperger's. Now, ADHD, it isn't a lack of focus. It's a hyper focus, but it's what keeps that focus. So if you ask me about your gym workout, I'll lean in, I'll be all ears, I'll be listening to every word you say. Start talking about real estate, my eyes are wandering around the room because it's not something I'm interested in and I can't hyper focus on it. So there is neuroepinephrine and there is dopamine. Neuroepinephrine is the drug in your brain that gets released when you see a predator. And you get startled and you have to hyper focus or you won't survive. Yep. Now, dopamine is the reward center of the brain. When you complete a task, you get hit with dopamine. So people with ADHD have a shortage of dopamine. The dopamine acts as a conductor in a band, and people with ADHD don't have that conductor.
Okay.
That's how Huberman explained ADHD.
Yeah.
So if I have a task to do, let's say it's something manual, like going to a doctor, I don't have the drive to do it. So something as simple as, let's say, doing the dishes can feel like you're Atlas holding the world on your shoulders. So we don't have that reward center in our brains. So if we're not motivated to do something properly, we're not going to do it. So that's why the right environment for someone with ADHD it's so important, because if you're not motivated to do something, you don't get that dopamine hit. It's going to be impossible to do. Yeah. So basically, people with ADHD can either be your best or your worst employee. We'll touch on a little bit later the warning signs. I've been 180% in one role and turn up 3 days a week and up.
Yeah. Okay. And that's simply based on where you're getting that motivation and that drive from it. So looking at the environment, that's even more critical because it needs to be an environment that motivates you to want to be there and succeed in that. And I think, again, touching on Shaheen's session, she said it's not attention deficit, but intention. So you're intending to do something, but you lack the focus to do that intention. So I'm intending to do my admin, but if you're not motivated by it, then you're not going to do it. And you're actually going to be intending to do something else because that's shinier or more motivation for you to do it.
100%.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's talk about those environments then. And I probably want to touch on two parts of that. One, from an onboarding perspective, what does that look like and how do we support neurodiverse and have inclusive onboarding from your perspective? And then those ongoing environments, what do they look both good and not so good? Because I think sometimes the environments and the onboarding is not specifically to deter or be detrimental to neurodiversity. We don't understand how to make them more inclusive. So help us understand that from onboarding and from an environment perspective.
So I've had being in 10 years, multiple different sorts of onboarding. I've done the death by slideshow, which never works. And I've had some really lean onboardings, which have allowed me to ramp really quickly and hit the ground running. So obviously what was that acronym you used for the different learning styles?
So VARK. So you've got visual, audible, read and write, and kinesthetic.
Yes. So obviously I learn kinesthetically, and I learn from my own mistakes, and I learn through talking through things. Yep. So me reading or watching a recorded Zoom is not going to work. Now, if it's something I'm interested in, the sales training side of it, I will have a bit more focus, but just at doing 3 weeks of product training, having an SE explain a product is not going to work. So more recently, I did some onboarding. It was a bit of product training. Then I was meeting with a manager to discuss it. So we'd go through it together and then discuss it. It wasn't very content heavy, but it allowed me to learn enough to be able to sell the product. And I was doing onboarding with managers in different time zones. And that onboarding was better than 3-week onboarding at a large $30 billion company where 3 weeks after I knew more when I started. So you need to really cater for the different learning types. Now, with that, if you get it at a neurodivergent friendly LMS, that should help. But just to have different sorts of training, have a video with someone, have some reading material, and then have it be interactive and then discuss it with someone. Yep. Just the plain old read this, now go sell doesn't work. Yeah. And I don't know why companies are still doing it.
Yeah, that's generally because it's easy, right? Build a PowerPoint deck. We've got it. Just give it. Here's the resources and read. And there's some of the challenges that I help my clients go through because, again, it's similar to that inclusivity. Sometimes people don't know how to make that more interactive. It's just been easier to build the PowerPoint deck. We get that from marketing. We get that from product, and we put them all into a repository somewhere, and that's where they go to read. So I think there's some overall themes there, especially with VARK or the different learning styles for neurotypical salespeople. But again, honing in on that a bit more for that neurodivergent person that needs a little bit more to help them have that intention to do each pieces of those learnings through it. So that's awesome. I think one of the key things that I took away from Shaheen's session as well, where she talked about this authenticity to be able to be yourself in a training session. So specifically around face-to-face. So if you're a doodler, doodle. It doesn't mean you're not paying attention to the content. You're not taking that content on. It's just your way to be able to stay focused. I've seen people with fidget spinners. I've seen people with different paraphernalia that helps them focus on those. So allowing those environments, and it's probably a good segue of getting into those environments, but from a learning perspective, including that in there, making it more interactive, having people get up and move around the room and put thoughts down on flip charts and stuff. And I think for me, face-to-face is always a better learning experience than just video and PowerPoint, as you say. And there's ways you can do that virtually. I know you can't pull a whole sales team into a room all the time to train them, but there are certainly different techniques and ways of doing that in an onboarding program that I've put in place and seen great success with. So talk to me, you've gone through that onboarding, you're out there, you're now selling, you've got your targets. How can we ensure that the sales environment is conducive to success for specifically neurodivergence? How do we make sure that we're conscious of that?
Okay. So I'll give you some examples of when I've been in a bad environment and what a good environment looks like, and some techniques to help keep your ADHD staff on track and motivated. So I worked at a company. I was absolutely killing it. I was being micromanaged. Even though I was top performer in the team, wasn't being managed properly, being micromanaged, focusing really on the things that I couldn't do as opposed to things I was doing well. And I was having multiple sick days each week, wasn't turning up. And people with ADHD, as you said, everyone's different, but I'm quite self-motivated. I don't need to be micromanaged. I don't need my hand held. If I need help, I will reach out. So moved to on 24 wells, 180% target. My manager did regular training sessions with me, upskilled me. Andrew Vidler, who he upskilled me. He gave me enough rogue. And when I ran into trouble, I would come to him and he would help me. I hit 180% target. I was top performer, top 4 in the company. people with ADHD can be very self-motivated. They're top performers in the right environments. Albert Einstein was believed to have ADHD because he was very unkempt. He could do these massive equations, this great, let's say, great visionary formulas and theories, and then he would get something like 2 times 2 is 5 wrong. So, that's why they think he was ADHD. Top performer, absolute genius in the right environment. So people with ADHD, you need to find out as a manager what motivates them.
Okay.
Because they're not getting that dopamine. So you need to find out why they're there, what motivates them, so you can hold them accountable when they do have a lull.
Yeah.
So ADHD, it is a roller coaster. It's been misdiagnosed. I've got friends who've been misdiagnosed as bipolar with ADHD because it's a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Some days you're good, some days you're bad.
Yeah.
When things are bad, it can really affect you and it comes out in different ways. So all the bad stuff are crutches for when people with ADHD, things aren't going well. So you need to find out what makes them ticks to keep them accountable, as well as realize that any warning signs that things aren't going well for them, multiple sick days being one.
Yep.
Now, so Andrew Vidler, perfect example, he led me with respect, let me do my own thing, helped upskill me, find out what made me tick and motivated me through that.
Yep.
And I was able to be top 5. Now, some techniques to help people with neurodivergence. Music is a big one. I read about the link between people with ADHD and music. I can't remember exactly what it is, but for some reason, music affects people with ADHD differently. There's probably a Huberman podcast about it.
Find more information. I'll put it down in the description for you as well. We'll catch that up.
Yeah. Now, having a buddy, having someone that they can work with, doesn't have to be a mentorship program. There's something called body doubling. And if someone else is in the room, people with ADHD are more likely to complete tasks. Maybe it's an accountability thing. Maybe it's I better do something. Someone's there. But body doubling is a technique that can be used to help keep them motivated or on track. I've reached out to multiple people when I'm working remotely to do cold calling sessions with them.
Yeah.
And it keeps you both accountable. Yeah. So there's a few techniques that can help people to have a better environment to help keep them motivated.
Yeah. And I've talked that before around what I call digital sales rooms, where it's a simple Zoom or a Teams. You've got another person there visually doing the work, and you've got this ability to be able to connect and talk through any challenges you've got. You don't have to be on speaker all the time, and you don't have to feel like you've got to talk to them all the time. But having that body doubling from a virtual sense as well, I've seen some great success in that just for neurotypical people. And if you're saying that works really well for neurodivergence as well, then, there's a great cause for having those in place just to see people continue to get through the tasks or the activities that they need to do. Just in there, Theo, you were talking about understanding what motivates somebody with ADHD. So you're talking about personal goals, personal achievements that they want, things outside of what we typically see in sales is you're just there to earn commission, where I know full well that commission is just a vehicle into some other thing that you want to achieve with family, whatever it may be. Understanding it. Is that what you were meaning more around that motivation piece?
Yeah. What makes them tick?
Yeah.
And not only that, what interests them? If I upsold cybersecurity and I hated it, I was successful, but hated it, found it boring, didn't want to learn about it. Yeah. I know 2 people with ADHD who are in cybersecurity. One of them's a 7-figure SaaS agent. So, what works, as you said, what works for one doesn't work for the other. So you need to find out what interests them. I've got a job going into gym SaaS because I'm a gym goer, and perfect job for me. I can't wait to cold call people that work in gyms, have a chat about the gym. Whereas being motivated to call someone about cybersecurity, I couldn't think of anything worse.
Yeah. So that's probably a good call out to any salesperson that thinks they're neurodivergent or have been diagnosed is what's important around understanding what your purpose would be and what are the things that would drive you from a product sense or an industry sense. And you're probably going to find more success in those environments where you're motivated to sell that product because it's of an interest to you. Yeah. So probably last question and then on to our final thoughts, but you talked a little bit about warning signs. You were saying warning signs for you were potential sick days or unexplained leave from the job. What are some of the other warning signs that sales leaders out there can see, even though you're still performing at a high level, right? You're still putting the output, but what are some of those other warning signs that you can see that maybe somebody is going off track, there is a potential derailment down the track?
Just coming into work unkempt, look like you haven't slept.
Yeah.
Just those energy levels. I'm an extrovert with ADHD, so I'm very high energy. A lot of ADHD people are introvert. Actually, I think it's something like 60% of ADHD people are introverts. And that's why it gets misdiagnosed so much, because you think someone with ADHD bouncing off the walls. But if someone's inattentive, not hyperactive, and they're an introvert, it's going to slide under the radar. If they're not their bubbly selves, if something seems a little bit off.
And that could probably attribute to if you're remote or working out of an office, they're a little bit harder to see that because perception is you're online and you're doing a job, but you might see a dip in terms of attendance to meetings or showing up late to meetings or just not reaching out in fast responses to emails and chats and things like that. It's being aware and conscious of that when building those environments out. Awesome. Theo, I really want to thank you for being very vulnerable, authentic, and transparent in this. I think sometimes this is something that people would steer away from because it's a little bit hard to understand. But I think the more we lean in, the more we want to try and create those environments and those onboardings, I think it's going to be a real positive for the sales industry and anyone in those sales roles. So bottom of my heart, I really do want to thank you for coming on and sharing that. I know I've learned a lot more out of that as well. So I know we're going to continue to have these conversations. If anyone does want any more information, Theo's LinkedIn will be in the description below. You can reach out either to myself or Theo, or if you do want to see more of Shaheen's work as well, I can certainly put you in touch with her. Theo, thanks again. I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to seeing sales leaders out there creating these new environments that are just going to help everyone thrive, especially from an inclusive and neurodivergent. Thank you. And I look forward to seeing everyone on the next episode.